morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Michelle Johnston, and I'm pleased to call to order the 2021 Society Council Meeting.
And I wanted to start off your events in a good way. Over here, I have one of our sacred medicines that we share on Mother Earth so openly with everyone. Before we formally introduce ourselves and share about this land, let's have a good morning smudge. And I wanted to help share and teach everyone real quickly about what that is. So with this medicine, the sage that we picked out in Manitoba, we're gonna give that medicine some instructions, and these instructions are like this, and I'll share this with everyone at the same time. But cleanse my mind so that I could think these good things today. Medicine, miigwech. Cleanse my eyes so that I see things in a clear way, miigwech. Cleanse this area today, sage, so that I speak in a truthful way to others. Cleanse my spirit here, my spirit home, so that I feel things in a good way. Cleanse where I may walk today or travel today, so that I walk in a safe way. And we always offer some of that medicine to Mother Earth. So Mother Earth, have a nice smudge. We're so thankful for that sky. We're so thankful for the land. We're so thankful for the waters. We're so thankful for underneath that ground.
You know, the pandemic has caused extraordinary loss all around the world. We have felt losses in our small corner of the world. Shirley Kung was a dedicated society activist who passed far too young. She served the OPG local members as a delegate and as unit director for finance from 2006 to 2015. Shirley was an excellent representative for her members, and I valued her contributions to executive board. She only stepped away from her duties to tend to her illness. Our society family was also deeply saddened to learn that former NWMO local vice president Andre Borauer passed away on November 1st. Andre's calm, logical demeanor served the society well, especially in his role on the grievance appeal panel. I know we all have Andre's friends and loved ones in our thoughts.
At the convention, we saw the retirement of IFPTE President Paul Sheeran, who came to the International 15 years ago from SPIA, Local 2001, representing largely Boeing workers, aerospace workers. Paul, who many of you know Paul personally, and he'll be honored later on today here by the Society. He served IFPTE with passion and vigor, and his legacy and presence will certainly continue for many years to come throughout our Federation. IFPTE is also continuing our very broad and aggressive legislative program by working with the United States Congress and the Biden administration to achieve legislative victories for working people, particularly those represented by unions. And we had a huge victory here over the weekend with passage of one of the two infrastructure bills, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that finally passed the House and is expected to be signed into law by President Biden any time now. But we believe that this historic investment in infrastructure will lead to millions of union represented jobs, including in industries where IFPTE already has strong representation and can continue to grow more. This is a good thing for IFPTE. Unfortunately, when it comes to Ontario, with the current Ford government, they somewhat resemble the union busting policies that we have dealt with here over the previous 4 years. The Ford government has, like the Trump administration, actively attacked unions and their members. These attacks were particularly cruel to public sector workers whose wages, union protections, and bargaining power have been eroded and under attack. Some of the things, just to recap, that the Ford government has done is they cut school funding, cut healthcare resources, cut autism programs, cut environmental protections, and overall cut the investment in people and communities. And as bad as all that is, they also cut the illegal aid programs that directly help not only working Canadians, but the most vulnerable in our society. and the public services that Canada's workers provide, including thousands of society members, were and continue to be targeted for steep cuts. This anti-union, anti-worker climate created by Ford didn't stop there. It continues to this day and is something that both IFPTE and the society need to continue to monitor and educate our members about as next June's election comes closer.
Message that not only do we need to maintain nuclear power, and we need to grow it to meet all of our energy needs. It needs to be a robust public investment. After all, it is clean, affordable, it's reliable, and it's safe. And it is a sector that provides tens of thousands of good paying, middle income, union represented jobs throughout North America. I know I have worked for over 3 decades at the Tennessee Valley Authority, specifically the Sequoia nuclear plant. I've represented workers in nuclear and in energy in general for decades. I'm intimately familiar with the importance of this sector, which is why I am and will always be committed to continuing to advocate aggressively for this industry, and that the jobs that come with it will be good union jobs.
I'm so pleased to be here as the president of the Toronto and New York Region Labor Council. We represent 150 affiliates and more than 220,000 working people in this region. And like each of you, I'm a worker warrior. I'm committed to continue fighting to raise union standards. As hotel worker, I'm a member of Unite Here Local 75, and I fought against poverty wages, immigrant exploitation in the hospitality sector. I also fought alongside many of you for better labor laws for all workers in Ontario. I believe in protecting our hard-earned jobs and standard for the next generation of workers. I was there in the Hydro One strike when the employer was trying to bring in 2-tier wages and benefits. Our Labor Council was there on the picket line. We acted in solidarity to raise up all workers and to strengthen the labor movement. We continue this fight today. We fight for economic, social, racial, and climate justice. We know that the bosses and the conservative parties have a business-friendly plan to recover, profiting from the pandemic. They are acting now. They're not waiting for the pandemic to end. The Ford's debilitating cuts to legal aid Ontario only show that the conservative and their business friends do not care about those who are most marginalized. They only care about themselves. Same thing with Bill 124, which is shamefully kept wages for public sector workers below inflation.
Serving as president isn't just about the day-to-day work. There is a great responsibility that I know Scott felt, and I feel it too. It's about ensuring our union is there for each member every single day with the best representation we can provide. It's about leading a wonderful, committed team of elected representatives and staff to deliver for members in ways big and small. And it's about setting an example for all to follow to ensure we are the best stewards possible for the resources our members entrust with us. I want to thank all of our members for entrusting this role to me. The unfolding climate crisis is bringing into clearer focus for decision makers the measures that are necessary to protect the future of our planet. Maintaining a low carbon grid means that all the investment needed to create the infrastructure for electrification of transportation, building and home operations, and industry will pay even greater dividends. Whether it's our own challenge of Pickering's decommissioning or the global climate crisis, there are days where it all feels daunting. But I look at the solutions and I feel great hope and optimism for our future. By organizing professionals in more sectors, we will lift up not just our new members, but also ourselves. As we push for climate solutions like new nuclear and electrification, I can see Ontario's prosperous future taking shape with good, green union jobs for all. But
these attacks on our rights to free and fair collective bargaining, the process that we use to build our collective power, to give us voice in our workplaces and improve the lives and working conditions of our members. These agreements we bargain are not just empty words on a paper. They have meaning, and we will fight to improve upon them and to ensure they are respected. The rights that we bargain on behalf of our members are central to the work that we do as trade unionists, activists, and leaders. And that's why I'm proud to tell you that the OFL has pulled together a coalition of unions to fight these unconstitutional attacks on our rights. When Ford's Conservatives attack our rights, we stand up and together we fight back. We also vow not to forget all of the harm that Ford's Conservatives have caused workers. For 3 years, Ford's agenda has hurt working people. We know because we've been keeping track. According to the latest numbers on our Ford tracker, the Ford Conservative government has failed workers in over 600 different ways. Ford is trying to convince us that he's changed his ways. But a leopard can't change his spots, and an anti-worker government is not going to change their ways in 7 months after acting against workers' interests for the past 3 years. We won't forget how they abandoned the workers they called heroes. We won't forget that they denied people safe working conditions. We won't forget that they failed Ontario.
Nuclear power is very often misunderstood, and it does not get the admiration that it deserves. Nuclear workers are absolutely an integral part of the transition to greener energy production. So thank you very much, Michelle, Chris, Mike, all of you who were involved in putting together that unforgettable experience for us. We very much appreciate it. Here in Ontario, we heard Patty speak about this, but you're heading into a very important election next spring. Doug Ford is so desperately trying to sell himself as a friend to workers in Ontario. He acts like he's done a complete 180. But the truth is, we know that he's a classic anti-worker conservative. Behind the friendly rhetoric, we find attacks on workers and austerity for everyday people. The recent minimum wage announcement to $15 per hour, for example, is just a simple attempt to redirect attention away from the fact that he canceled this very $15 minimum wage from taking effect back in 2019. And he totally ignores the fact that really no jurisdiction in Ontario does $15 provide a living wage. Nowhere in Ontario can people get by on that amount of money. Ontario is one of the last jurisdictions in Canada to adopt that. Workers in Ontario should be much further ahead, and they deserve so much better. Ford is trying so hard to court the Labour vote because he can see our strength. At the federal level, we're hearing that the government is preparing to remove restrictions on banks and insurance companies, and Bay Street is salivating at the prospect. When the government poured money into the financial sector to support our economy during the pandemic, banks were instructed to suspend share buybacks and not to increase dividend payments. Instead of investing any remaining support money back into their workforce through improved wages and benefits, the banks now think it's okay to reward themselves and investors with huge increases in dividends and share buybacks. And that is quite frankly unconscionable. Giant pandemic payouts to investors and executives while supports for people is being cut off is simply wrong. Parliament is going to be reconvening in a few weeks, and they must put the brakes on the grotesque pandemic payouts to the richest in our country. The MPs must act to make sure that giant corporations and wealthy individuals who made record profits during the pandemic finally pay their fair share. And that is why we cannot let the recent status quo election lead to a status quo parliament. So while we know the seat count may not have changed much, the nature of our ambition has to grow to meet the challenges facing us. There is a real opportunity in a minority parliament that we must take advantage of. It is our moment to use our influence to make real, substantial, and positive change happen, and to make sure that our new parliament delivers a recovery with workers and their families at its heart. It has to start with the federal government and the new parliament finally getting back to work and taking urgent, concrete action to help the 800,000 workers who are still unemployed or underemployed and have now been cut off from emergency supports. So many people have absolutely nowhere else to turn. We need a recovery that strengthens public health care and that stops talking about it, but actually implements a single universal pharmacare program, so affordable medicine is within reach for everyone across our country. Canadians are also looking for a recovery that replaces the millions of lost jobs with better ones and permanently fixes our broken EI system so that workers are not left behind in tough times. A recovery that repairs the dangerous cracks in our social safety net, because we don't know when the next crisis is going to hit. It may be another health or a climate-related crisis, but we know we have to be ready. And that means investing in things like education and affordable housing. And finally finishing the job started so long ago, making affordable, high-quality childcare available to every family in every province and territory, and delivering a just transition for workers impacted by the climate crisis. Investing today so that we are ready for tomorrow.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all of the members of Local 160 Society. You know, I had just a tremendous time working with the leadership, the membership, and the staff at Local 160. And I've always said, we got a line I use. I said, you know, we're not here to bring management to their knees. We're here to bring them to their senses. Because if management would just get out of the way and let us do our job, we can do tremendous things. We can improve the efficiencies of companies and corporations and power plants and all of those things. But sometimes we have to bring them to their senses.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so honored to be here and humbled to be asked to give you a talk today. I think a truth for Canada and Canadians to understand a bit about how Canada was built in the first place, before we even get to building back better. I think it's key to acknowledge how Canada was built. And this was a fundamental way that Canada was built, with the appropriation of, well, mostly all things Indigenous, you know, our lands, our cultures, our languages, our people, and our lives. When things are done to families and children like that, particularly by states, you know, the challenge or the tactic is meant to not just affect the children, right? Because the goal of residential schools, and this is where we grapple with in Canada, the goal of residential schools was not just to ensure that my grandmother did not speak her language. The goal was to ensure that my mother didn't, and that I didn't, and my children didn't either. And they're meant to have generational impacts. And so one of the challenges is, first we have to acknowledge that these places, these countries, these nations that are trying to reconcile and trying to do this work, that they didn't start out. That the reason why they have to do equity and inclusion and truth and reconciliation is because they were not founded and did not exist for most of their history with those principles in mind. In quite the opposite. Even when those countries stated that they were about freedom and equality, that they didn't actually practice that until very recently, if they even do right now. We can resist and start to think about how we reposition or reframe the idea that we're not in competition with one another, that the success of one is inherently good for us. This is again a teaching COVID still to this day is teaching us, right? Which is that we take precautions, we take care, we do things that are for the benefit of everyone around us as much as it is the benefit to us. And that is how we get to this, because that's living in relationship. That's living in right relationship with one another, as my people would say.
Welcome to the leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, Andrea Horwath.
Hello, friends. Bonjour, chers amis. It is such a pleasure to join you again at the annual council meeting of the Society. I'm just so thrilled to be here. President JOHNSTON, Michelle, thank you for the kind introduction, and congratulations again to you and Lori Reed on your elections as President and Secretary Treasurer this summer. We need a government that respects and listens to working people, one that doesn't just treat you like adversaries to undercut, but as respected partners and leaders in your fields and your communities. New Democrats have always been proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with unions as respected partners because we know you are the key to decent pay, fair work conditions, and safe, healthy workplaces. And that a union card is still the best ticket to security and the middle class for working people and their families. And that's why we'll always work with you to protect collective bargaining rights, not squeeze working people and attack collective bargaining like Doug Ford, and frankly, the Liberals before him have done. It's why we're still pushing to restore access to the provisions of collective agreements Doug Ford took away, and why we're not going to stop until we repeal Bill 124, his unconstitutional attack on working people. The people of this province are diverse, welcoming, and kind. They're hopeful, and they want to leave the world better than they found it. They deserve a government that reflects those values and that puts them into action. They deserve a premier who's in it for them. I know who I stand with. I know who I'm in it for. I'm Andrea Horwath, daughter of a unionized auto worker, proud to be born and raised in working class Hamilton, proud of my working class roots, and I'm proud to be running to be your premier. Together, we can build a government that puts Ontarians first, that invests in our workers, our local businesses, our communities, and the vital public services we all depend on. This is how we start fixing what's been broken, both before and throughout the pandemic.